How's it going, everybody? I'm Driftwood. We're going to continue with our GameMaker Studio 2 tutorial series. So in this game we're going to introduce a simple shooting mechanic which will involve creating a new sprite, creating a new object, and writing the code so that it'll fire when we left click. Okay, so I've also figured out a good way to show the code for the videos. What I'll do is I'll just kind of zoom in when I'm writing code so that you guys can see that better. Let me know if that will make a difference. One other thing from the last video, I noticed I typoed right here. I put 1208, but the same concept applied. We're going to go 1280, so I fixed that. Another thing in the last video, I was telling you guys we were going to change the game speed to 60 FPS. Now, it's kind of important to realize that it's not actual in GMS2 real FPS. It's just how many times do you want, how many times per second do you want the game to check the step phase, the step event. That's what the FPS is. So it will run 60. If you click on game options right here on the top, you go to general, and then you can change your game's frames per second, and this is going to not affect your real FPS, which can be hampered by your hardware, but it's going to basically run at 60 FPS generally, and it's going to run 60 step phases every second. So you might want to do that. I think games look better at 60 FPS, so let's just get used to programming all of our pixel movement things at 60 FPS. So we'll go up to there, hit game options, go to general, change the 30 to a 60, and hit OK. Alright, now that we've got that taken care of, we need to make a new sprite, a bullet, and we need to make a new object, that bullet. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll go up to sprites, right click, and create a new sprite. Let's call this SPR_bullet. And we're going to edit the size. Once again, we're going to go with the 16 pixel. And we'll hit apply on that. And this doesn't really need to be animated, but it's so easy to animate objects. Animate sprites in this editor. Why not make it animated, right? So let's go ahead and zoom in with control and middle mouse button so we can see the origin here, and we'll select middle center, or you can just select wherever you want, or you can type 88. Excuse me. So we're going to double click on the empty frame right here, and we can zoom out just a little bit so that we can kind of get a better look at it with middle mouse button scroll and control. And let's pick a color for our bullet. I think like a dark gray would look good. We'll go with the gray. And probably pick like, so do we want the outline? Let's go with a field circle. We'll just kind of make like a little ball like that with the one border. That seems to be about fine. We could even kind of make it a lighter shade inside of it if we wanted to. Or we could kind of get in more detail and add a little bit of shade to it, or, you know, the opposite of shadowing. When you're making your own game, it's probably a good idea to learn a little bit of everything. A little bit of editing sprites, a little bit of making music and making sounds, because unless you want to contract all that work out, you're going to have to do it yourself or look for free art online. So that's another thing, a video I'm going to make is a bunch of free resources to use that royalty free. But let's get back to what we're talking about. Let's go ahead and animate that. So we'll left click on this, we'll press Control C and Control V. Let's go ahead and do 8 frames. That seems to be a good number. And let's just kind of animate a little bit. I'm not sure how we're going to make it, but that's kind of the fun of it. We're not making a game that's going to sell. Really, we're making a game to learn, so let's kind of play around a little bit and try to find something that looks cool. We're going to stick with another gray, and we're just going to animate that by clicking the play. And let's just go ahead and draw a few lines like that. Just something like that, a little bit of animation. Cool. And that seems to be perfect. It kind of gave the illusion of it spinning, I would think, but it doesn't really. It's all up to your perception. Anyway, let's move on. So we'll close that. You'll see it'll auto-save up there. Remember, that help file is really useful. So we've got that sprite, SPR_bullet. We'll go ahead and close out of that. Let's go to the objects, right click and create a new object. We'll call this obj underscore bullet. Let's assign that new sprite, the sprite bullet, to it, and let's add an event. So we're probably going to need a create event. We might need a step event. We're also going to want an other event, and we'll get to that. So let's start with a create event. So we can get rid of this. Another thing, you may notice that there's some text in green. If you want to add a comment, you can go / this stuff gets ignored. So whenever you do two backslashes, everything after that is just for the sake of the coder, for, you know, a little reminder. That's like a note tag for you to use. When it runs this code, it completely looks over anything after this line. You could also do something else. It's called commenting. So you can go / and then an asterisk, and then anything you type right here will be completely ignored. And then whenever you're done, you do another asterisk and another /, and now this is all code. And if we left that, we would get an error saying, hey, that's not quite right, because that doesn't mean anything, you see. And let's talk about a little bit more about the advanced error detection in GMS2. So whenever you type something and you get this little red bar, you can kind of hover over it with your mouse, and it'll tell you a general idea of what's wrong. It says unnecessary expression. We're using it as a statement. We're saying but that doesn't mean anything, and GMS wouldn't know what to do with that. So it's saying, hey, check this out, it might be wrong, which it is. Also, it gives you information in the bottom bar. So let's take a look at, we don't actually need any of that. That was just to teach you some. So what are we going to want on this bullet? It's 16 by 16, but it's the same size of the player. We probably don't want the whole bullets to be exactly the same size as the player, so let's scale it down. We're going to use the same thing we did to scale the player up. We're going to go image underscore X scale. Oh, let's do this little zoom in thing, right? Boom, so you guys can see a little bit better. Image underscore X scale equals, we want it smaller than 16 by 16, so we're going to use a decimal, 0.5. And we'll do an end line. So we'll do the same thing for the Y scale. You can also emit the X or the Y and end up getting like a stretched out image, and maybe that's something that you want to have in your game. Maybe it's not. So that's just to resize it, and that's going to be done on the create event. We might want to add like some variables to this to determine its power, right? So let's create some new variables. We can create temporary variables by typing var, and that means if we try to reference this variable outside of this event, it won't read it. But we probably want to reference let's say bullet power. We probably want to reference bullet power outside of the create event on the bullet. So we're not going to use var. We're just going to say bullet power. And that's going to let us reference this anywhere inside the object, and we could even access this variable from other objects if we include like obj underscore bullet dot, and then we can say bullet power, and we could type this inside like the player object, and we can reference this variable inside another object, which is really cool. We're not going to do that right here, but we will do that later on. So let's assign a value. How strong do we want this bullet to be? Let's set it to a power of 1, or let's set it to a power of 3. We'll say bullet power equals 3. So we're just creating a variable right there. Very simple. And you could call it whatever you want. We're going to need to assign a direction to it, right? So let's say direction equals, now direction, you see how some things light up as green, right? That means it's already pre-built. Like this is a function. This is already a keyword that GameMaker has defined, and it knows what to do with it. So this is already going to find the direction, but it's going to ask for, this is going to assign the direction to it. But we need to basically figure out what direction, right? What direction? So we're going to use some code called point underscore direction, and we're going to do some parentheses and an inline. So in these parentheses, I'm going to scroll down, and you can see right here we're inside this. So it's telling us we have an error because we're expecting 4 arguments to this point direction function, but we have none in there, so there's an error there. If we scroll down to the bottom, we can see what it's looking for. it's looking for an x1, a y1, an x2, and a y2. So we need to, basically an x1 and a y1 is one spot on the screen, and then x2 and y2 is the other spot on the screen. So we need to create a line, right? So the first line needs to be, where do we want it to be? Probably maybe the player, or we could say this object, right? Yeah, because we'll create this bullet on the player with an instance create layer, and then we'll just use that location. So we're going to say X and Y. These are also, whenever you say X or Y, it's going to refer of the current X and Y location of the object you're typing into. So we're using object bullets. So if we say X and Y, we're going to say wherever object bullets X is and wherever object bullets X, Y is, use that as the first two arguments. The next argument we want to do is like, where do we want this bullet to go? What direction do we want it to go? So there's another thing we can do, mouse underscore X. And that's going to take the position of where the mouse is, the X value, and then mouse underscore Y. So this is going to go, draw a line from where the bullet is to where the mouse is, and assign that to the value of our direction. And that's what that line is doing. So the next thing we need to do is add a little bit of variance. So it's not like a laser beam, like bullets aren't completely accurate each time. So we need to basically do direction. We need to create like a little bit of randomness to it, so it kind of sprays a little bit. So we're going to say direction equals its own direction, but we're also going to say plus random underscore range. And this is going to make it kind of, this is going to generate a number, and we can scroll down and see what it's looking for between X and Y. So random range between what and what? So let's say a random range between -5 pixels and 5 pixels. So it'll go anywhere from where it's at, a little bit 5 pixels off to one side and 5 pixels off to the other side. So we're changing this direction by a factor of 10, right? From, it would normally be 0, but now it's being turned one way or the other. And each time it calls on this, like each bullet will have its own random range and direction. So we've kind of made it more like a spray. The next thing we want to do is give it a speed. So we can create our own speed, or we can use the built-in speed. See how it highlighted green? This is a built-in one. We're going to use, for this simple object, we're going to use the built-in speed so to make it easier. And it's going to basically, it's going to know what to do with it. So we're going to say whatever speed we want it to have. We can even create a variable and assign speed to that speed if we want to. So to show you how you would do that, let's go like this and would say bullet speed equals whatever we want. Let's say 10. And then you can say bullet speed. So we're saying our pre-built speed is now using whatever variable we change right here. This is actually kind of pointless for how we have it, right? But if we want to access this bullet speed from another object, we'll be able to change the speed of the bullet from another object. So even though this seems like redundancy, it's giving us flexibility later on to change the speed of this object by changing object underscore bullet dot bullet speed. So we're going to go ahead and leave it like that. So the next thing we have to think about is, well, since it's a round object, we don't actually have to change its angle, but it does have that little spinning icon thing to it, or the spinning animation we put to it. So maybe we want that to spin too, to make it look a little more animated. So there's another line of code we can use called image underscore angle. And image angle will rotate the object from 0 to 360. And image angle is kind of weird. And let me open up Photoshop to kind of to show you. So let's create a new thing. So image, the angle works like this. Let's just get black here. So imagine this is 360, right? This is where 0 is at. This is probably too big. So let's go ahead and undo, and step backwards. So this is this direction is 0, but then it goes counterclockwise. So it's going to go 90 like this. And then it's going to go 180. And then it's going to go 270. So when you set your image angle to 0, it's going to default to this one. It's going to go right. If you want it to go to 80, it's going to make it face left. So that's how image angle and rotation works in the game. Let's go ahead and go back to this one. So we're going to set our image angle to the direction. So if we set this to the direction, it's going to rotate it using the random range and whatever we put into it right there. So I think with this code right here, the bullet has enough to go wherever the mouse goes when it's created. But we still haven't made the thing that creates it, right? So we have to, we'll go ahead and save that. We have to edit. Oh, before we get done with this, let's do one more thing. Let's add an event with the bullet, because when we create an object and it goes off in a direction, it's going to keep going for infinity. And if you fire enough bullets, it's going to eventually lag your system, because those objects are never being destroyed. So you always want to be able to destroy the objects that you create. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the room's bounding box. So we're going to go other outside room. So we're at an event, we say other and outside room. And in here, when this object gets outside of the room, what do we want it to do? We want to destroy itself. We want to get rid of that bullet because we can't see it anymore anyway. So we're going to go instance underscore destroy. And then we do open and close bracket. So that doesn't need any parameters, and you can see down here that it's not actually looking for any special parameters. It says ID, and we could put in things, but this by itself, I accidentally did something I wanted to show you guys, because I was using the middle mouse button to scroll. This by itself will destroy itself when it's called. So if it gets outside the room, it will destroy itself. It will remove the object from the game, clearing that memory and stopping it from crashing after enough time. So that little thing I did where it jumped to the help file, this is a really cool trick. If you hover over any code that's predefined in the help file, and you middle mouse click it, it will open up the help file and give you more information on it, which is going to save you so much time. You don't have to go back to search and type it in and then misspell it and it doesn't show. Just middle mouse click it, and it'll show you all kinds of information on that code, which is a really neat thing. So now we're done with the object bullet event. We'll just scroll back out, and we need to go to our player event now. So in our player event, we've got the create step, which changes its or the create event, sorry, that changes its size, and we have the step event that's checking every frame of the game if we're pressing a button and changing our location if we are. But we need to do something else. We need to figure out some way to create that bullet, right? How are we going to create that? We know when the bullet starts, whenever it's created, it's going to move towards the mouse and in a line from where it's created to the mouse and keep going until it gets outside the box, the room, and then it's going to kill itself. So how would we create it? Well, we're going to do a conditional statement. We're going to say if, and we'll just go ahead and set that up. So there's a way to check if you pressed a button, and it goes mouse checked. No, just check. Mouse check button. Mouse check button, and then we need some more parameters in there. We're going to say mouse check button. Do we want it to be left or right button? Let's say left. So we're going to say MB for mouse button underscore left. And you can see as I'm typing it out, it's being this sub menu is popping up and being populated by suggestions, what the engine thinks you might want to put in there. So you can always hit tab and it'll fill it up there. So we're saying if we're pressing the left mouse button, do this. What do we want to happen? Well, the next thing we want to do is create that. We're pressing the left mouse button. We want to create that object, right? So there's a little line of code for that. Instance underscore create underscore layer, and we need some things for that, right? So let's look at the bottom. We need an X, we need a Y, like where is it going to come from? We need a layer ID. What layer on the map do we want it to appear on? and we need to name the object that we want to create. So let's go ahead and go up here. We're going to say, is it just X? We are on the player, right? So we don't have to type obj underscore player dot x, but we could if we wanted to. But let's simplify it. We're just going to say x, comma, y, comma, and then what else do we need? The layer, right? So when you're talking about layer, you need to include two parentheses, and these are double quotes. I don't know if it works with single quotes. But let's create a new layer while we're at it for just the bullets, right? So we've got background layer, we've got tile 1, tile 2, we've got instances. We could just put it on instances layer, but let's create a new layer that's above the other instances. So it will draw on top of like enemies or the player. So let's create a new layer right here. Create new instance layer, boom, and that's a layer on top. Let's actually click on this and rename that layer. We're going to call it bullet. We're going to call it, yeah, bullets. Bullet layer. Like that. And while we're at it, let's create a naming convention. We're going to say instance layer. We're going to say, rename this one tile layer 2. This will be tile layer 1. Tile layer 1. And we'll go ahead and rename this one as well. We'll say BG layer or background layer. When you create a naming convention, it makes it easier to reference the code later on. So let's go back to our resources. Let's go back to our workspace. Inside here, we want to create this on the bullet layer. And we need one more thing. We need to say what object do we want to create. We need to create object underscore bullet. So we're going to say create that bullet on this layer at this location. And that bullet, once it's created, let's go back to that. Oh no, that's the sprite. We can close that now. The object bullet. When it's created, it will automatically change its size, assign these variables to it, assign values to direction, change the speed based off the variables that's been set, change the image angle. And because this is pre-built, it's going to move. Well, it should anyway. I think it'll work. Let's go ahead, save the game. Let's look at the player object. I think I got it right. That's on the step. Let's go ahead and move that right there. I think it's that simple. Let's go ahead and check it. If it doesn't work, we'll figure out why it's not working. We may get bugs. Luckily, when we do get a bug, there we go. So we're going to move around, and you can notice that since we changed the speed of the room from 30 in the last tutorial to 60 to this tutorial, we're moving a little bit faster, and twice as fast actually, because we're getting twice as many frames in that same second. So instead of 30 times 3 pixels per second, we're getting 60. So we're going 180 pixels every second across the screen. And actually, when we move diagonal, we're moving closer to 220 something, but we'll address that later on. So if we hold the left mouse, we're just spraying bullets all over the place. And all of these bullets are their own object that can be interacted with and collided with. And normally this would be too many objects to have if we didn't destroy them, but as soon as they get out of the screen, they're getting rid of, they're gone. So there's no system leaks because all of these objects aren't traveling to infinity, they're being destroyed as soon as they leave the room. So there we go. That's going to do it for this tutorial on how to create a new sprite, how to create a new object for a bullet, how to change the size of the bullet, how to assign values to direction and speed, how to assign variables that we can change arbitrarily later on from any object we want in the game, and how to use how to make a conditional statement that will call a script to do whatever you want whenever you press the left mouse button. In this case, we also learned how to create a new object with the instance create layer function. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I think it turned out pretty nice. Turned out pretty neat. We got like this Gatling gun. Maybe in the next tutorial we'll like do some sound effects or something. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you want to see next. I'm gonna basically follow some sort of my own guideline, but I'll take suggestions. but we're going to try to keep it very simple until we catch everybody up, and then we can all go forward. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video tutorial, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know you guys like this. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. I have tons of RPG Maker tutorials if you're into that. I've got a ton. I've got hundreds. And if you're interested in learning GameMaker Studio 2, stay tuned and subscribe, because there's going to be a lot of tutorials coming in the future. So thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. You guys are awesome. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.